I've always found the wilderness a great place to escape from it all. It's not for everyone, but I've grown to love its rugged beauty and solitude. My days are pretty simple, chopping wood, fishing, and watching the weather. It's a simple life, but it suits me, especially after leaving the noise and chaos of the city behind. I found a peace that had long eluded me amidst the mountains and the sea. I moved to this remote Alaskan territory a couple of years ago and mostly keep to myself. The town is small, just a handful of buildings along the shore. I only go there when I had to go into town to get supplies because winter is coming. It had been a few months since my last visit. The settlement, which has about 300 people, has a couple of gas stations, a grocery store that doubles as a hardware shop, and a small flight service. I needed to stock up before winter fully set in. I tied up my boat this morning and unexpectedly slipped and fell into the icy water. Amber was there to help with the lines. She's about 19 or 20 and always on the dock when I come to town. She's friendly, but I keep my distance. She's much younger than me. I respect her family, and it's clear she has a crush on me, but she's still too young for me to consider her as a partner. As she was tying up the bow line, a reckless boater came into the dock area fast and slammed into reverse, sending a huge wake across the water. Amber was facing away from me. Without a moment's hesitation, I dived in after her. The cold shock nearly took my breath away, but I managed to swim to her. Glancing up, I saw the boaters laughing. Anger surged through me, but I focused on getting Amber back. I grabbed her under the arms and pulled her to the dock. I pulled her to the dock, and another person helped pull her up. I used the cleat to haul myself out of the water, which was around 38 degrees, and we were both shivering uncontrollably. We needed to get warm immediately, so I took her to the shower on my cabin cruiser, which was nearby. I had a full water tank, so I went to get Lacey. Tell her. Amber fell into the water. She's at my boat and will be in the shower warming up. She'll need to change her clothes. You got it, JW. I watched Ben take off down the dock. He's a man of 65, but he moved like he was 20. I was impressed. I managed to stand. I was still shivering uncontrollably when I bent down to pick up Amber, who was curled up and shaking. I didn't have much time before I'd be too weak to move. I carried her onto my boat, started the generator, and rushed to the lower berth. I quickly turned on the shower and exposed Amber's wet clothes. I got her out of the water and into the shower, where I started to rub her arms and legs to get her blood circulating. I was grateful for the on-demand water heater. It wasn't burning hot, but it was warm enough. The shower stall was tight, but I kept rubbing Amber's body to warm her up, and I did the same for myself. She'd been in the water for about 5 to 8 minutes, and I'd been in for almost as long. The cold had chilled me to the bone, but after 10 minutes, I started to come around. I took a chance and stepped out to heat up water on the stove. We needed something warm to drink, dripping wet in my boxers. I struggled to light the stove with my shaking hands. Just then, Lacey came in behind me as I nearly whined in frustration. You need to get back in the shower, Tom. I'll make the hot chocolate. Is Amber in the shower with you? I need to check. Get in the shower now. I didn't think about how it looked. I was nearly unclothed in the shower with Amber. Their daughter I was just too cold to care. Amber was still shivering with her back to me, so I kept rubbing her to warm her up. Your mom's outside and your dad will be here soon. Move over, Rub. We need to warm up. I'm warm now. This is a dream come true for me. You saved my life, JW. You pulled me out of a bad situation without a second thought. You saved my life. I was almost frozen, but you saved me. Move your arms and legs. Your mom's making hot chocolate. A few minutes later, I heard Tom, her father, come aboard. I knew it was time to get out of the shower and into dry clothes. Then it hit me. Their daughter was unclothed. What would they think? I stepped out first, wrapping a towel around Amber. Her mom handed her clothes as I dried off quickly and pulled on jeans and a sweater. Lacey handed me a cup of steaming hot chocolate. Here you go, JW. There's a bit of Irish in it. I thought you both could use it, thanks, Lacey. How's Amber? Oh, she's fine. She just had her first shower with a man she thinks a lot of, and one she's now seen most of. Lacey said, Dry. I know. I blushed. It was the fastest way to warm us up. I didn't mean anything. Hey, JW, we know we'd have you did what you had to do to survive that water is freezing. Tom nodded. How long were you in the water? About 8 minutes for Amber, 6 minutes for you. It felt like hours. I admitted that with how low your body fat is, I'm not surprised you were so cold. You both were close to hypothermia. Lacey gave Amber a once-over. Amber blushed and looked away. I'm just glad we were close to the dock when it happened. I knew JW would save me. He's that kind of man, Amber said, her voice full of admiration. It worried me a bit what happened. Ben mentioned that the big cruiser came in fast and its wave knocked. Amber said, JW, you saved my baby's life. I can't thank you enough. Lacey added, I jumped in because I saw she was struggling to breathe. That cold water can cause muscle spasms. She's lucky she didn't swallow a lot of water. Whatever you did, you saved her life. I can never thank you enough, Lacey replied, looking serious. We should thank that girl on the boat for our cold bath. She came in way too fast, and the wake was at least 4 trillions high. I said, I think that actress is here with her crew, scouting locations for a movie. She's a terror, if I'm not mistaken, Tom added, sounding disgusted, after some more talking. Lacey and Amber left before stepping off the boat. Amber hugged me tightly and gave me a kiss on the lips. She gave me a big kiss on the lips. I managed to pull away before things got more awkward in front of her parents as she spun around and left. I looked at Tom and Lacey, who were laughing. Looks like you've got something to think about, JW. You might get hitched. Tom teased loudly. Amber, who was not far down the dock, blushed and turned away. Ben stayed behind chatting about my heroics while I tidied up. I needed to head to the store for supplies, which was the whole reason I was in town. Amber's reaction troubled me. It was the first time she'd tried to kiss me, and she did it well. I wondered if her parents were thinking the same thing. I went to the general store to pick up what I needed. I overheard some people talking about the Hollywood group that had flown up to experience Alaska. I rolled my eyes. A few weeks here wouldn't teach them what living here was really like. There were too many people showing up each year. I missed the days when there were fewer people and everyone minded their own business. I've become a bit of a hermit. I'm 35 and I live off my land in the Alaskan wilds. I made enough money in the 90s to set up here, so now I mostly live off the land and sell things online till I cover some expenses this way. I enjoy the simple life. A few years back, my fiancée left me months before our wedding. Looking back, I realized I dodged a bullet. Since then, I've decided I don't need or want a relationship, at least for now. As I approached the store counter, I overheard some chatter. She's here to film a movie set in Alaska. One man said she's flying out at the end of the week in her fancy jet from Ketchikan. JW, you should meet her. She's a looker and about your age. Maybe she's searching for a real man. Jacob teased, Cut it out, Jacob. I'm not interested in any woman especially. I almost got eliminated today because of a movie star. I snapped, Why so cranky? You just took a quick swim, someone else chimed in. Why don't you try that swim and tell me how nice the water is? I shot back. Stop trying to set me up. I'm fine, relax, I added. Jacob laughed, but Emma thinks you could. Use a woman around? Yeah, right, like I need that headache, I muttered. Emma walked in just then. What's this about, JW? You do need a woman, trust me. Please stop trying to find me one. I don't want her. I need her. I was lucky when the last one left. I replied irritably. Jacob changed the topic and got, Are there any more of those cedar picnic tables ready? Yes, I've got 4. I'll drop them off in a few weeks, or maybe Paul can bring them if he stops by. Emma asked. She said, I thought his wife would have stopped that. She should appreciate that. I defended. Emma shot back, Women prefer their men alive. I replied, Not everyone wants to be tied down. Blame the one who left me, Emma said. Not all women. Maybe, I said, but I'm less angry now. After a round of laughter at my expense, I settled my bill, $374. 58, Jacob said I paid cash, grabbed my supplies and headed to my boat with these provisions. I'd be set for winter. I had a knack for reading nature's signs, and I felt a harsh winter was coming. I ran back to the store to get my mail. Inside, a crowd blocked the walkway. I need some lotion. My skin's drying out. You probably don't have anything good, but I'll take whatever until I can get something flown in. An annoyed voice said, Des, I'll get it for you. Jacob replied, Practically. He stumbled over himself, and I couldn't help but laugh as I squeezed past her. So what's so funny? She snapped at him. I've never seen him move that fast, I said, pointing to Jacob. He never helps me like that. You must be royalty. If anyone else talked to him like you did, they'd be thrown out. She gave a little laugh. Oh, that's interesting. You know, you could stand to learn a few manners and how to handle a boat. You nearly got someone fired today. I shot back. Her bodyguards moved in, but I warned them off or they'd get hurt. They tried to intimidate me, but I faced worse. "You're the guy who jumped in, right?" she asked. "Yeah, that water's deadly. Hypothermia sets in fast. You're overreacting. You seem fine. It took 45 minutes to warm up after just 8 minutes in that water. You almost eliminated her and me." My fiancée is a bit spoiled and self-centered. As I walked out, I heard her asking Jacob about me. I didn't catch his reply, but I knew he'd smooth things over. He runs a business after all. Her attitude irritated me, but I couldn't deny she was the most beautiful woman I'd seen in years. Not that it mattered. Beauty doesn't excuse. I noticed that most women in town were either married or too young. There weren't any single women my age that I was interested in, and I wasn't interested in getting involved with a married woman anyway. I was already dealing with keeping Amber at a distance. I realized that Amber had grown into a beautiful woman, which surprised me since I'd always seen her as just a kid. I saw a kid heading back to the cabin. I pictured Jacob rushing to fill the actress's order. He acted like she was special, but to me she seemed a bit snobbish. I just looked for publicity back at the cabin. I unpacked and started dinner as the stew warmed on the stove. I looked out to the beach and I saw some driftwood I could collect in the morning. Some of it could be used for making tables, and the rest would become firewood or material for home projects. My workshop is powered by a generator, and the cabin sits on a hill with a stunning view of the ocean and mountains. I own 50 acres. I'm free for the next few days, so my expenses are minimal. I gathered driftwood from the beach and offshore, towing it with my D6 cat. I cut it into planks and firewood, enough to keep warm through winter and make more picnic tables. My shop is decorated with glass floats I find while beachcombing. Most are green, but sometimes I find blue, yellow, or even red ones. Locals admire the setup, but I just see it as adding a bit of color. A few days later, I was on the mountain collecting branches for chair making. The weather was pretty bad, but you can't wait for perfect conditions. Over lunch, I saw a white streak with black smoke in the sky. At first, I thought it was a meteor, but it was a small jet with a burning engine. The jet came in fast at a bad angle. The pilot tried to pull up, but the left wing hit the water, spinning and breaking apart with each wave. I knew it would end up on the spit, which is a dangerous spot. If it crossed, it'd be lost along with anyone on board. I raced to the beach and jumped on my four-wheeler. Wheeler and I rushed to the spit next to the burning wreck. I grabbed my fire extinguisher, which was a 10 lb unit. The 10-pound fire extinguisher I had with me wasn't enough to put out the blaze, but it gave me enough time to assess the situation. I aimed the nozzle at the smoking fuselage and emptied it, hoping to get inside and help whoever was still there. I saw a limp figure in a seat release the seatbelt and drag them away. I went back 6 more times until the flames blocked my path. The pilots were likely dead, given the crushed cockpit. I tried to get closer, but I was forced back by. The heat was intense, and I pulled out the bodies of the movie star and her group. She was the first one I had rescued, though I hadn't realized it at the time. One of the 5 men I saved started coughing. His cough was more like a rattle at the end of life, with blood coming from his mouth, ears, and nose. Weakly, he grabbed my shirt and told my wife, "I'm sorry, I love her." Then he went still. He was gone. I checked the others, and there was another man. It was clear that the bodyguards had died before I pulled them out. The 4th man was badly injured, and I was worried about his gray face. I covered him with my raincoat. The 2nd person I pulled out was a young woman who was part of the actress's group. Her arm was clearly broken, and she needed medical help. However, the worsening weather made it unlikely that the Coast Guard could reach us. The actress, the first person I rescued, had some cuts and a head wound. She was wounded but seemed mostly okay. I thought she could help. "Are you hurt?" I asked her, my arm and back a bit sore, but I think I'm okay. She responded, wincing. "How's Sam, the guy with glasses, chinos, and loafers?" She hesitated, her voice breaking. "He didn't make it. He asked me to tell his wife he loved her." I felt a pit in my stomach. Oh no. What about the others? "Janice, Paul, Jim, the pilot's rest," she said quietly, trying to steady herself. "Janice's arm is broken, Paul is in bad shape, Jim the pilot, and your bodyguards are gone." I could barely speak. "You need to get help. Paul is my only lifeline. I can't move him." She replied urgently, "It might make things worse. Go sit with him and Janice. I'll make calls and grab supplies. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Understand?" She nodded, dazed. I watched as she walked over to Paul and Janice, None of them. They were dressed for the cold and probably thought they'd be in LA by lunchtime. I rushed back to the cabin and radioed the Coast Guard. The response came quickly, but it filled me with dread. We can't fly out until at least the day after tomorrow because of 75-knot winds and zero visibility. The cutters are grounded too, so you're on your own. I trusted the chief. If he said they couldn't come, it was bad, but I was desperate. Can't you send the man won't make it without help? The chief's voice was grim. What about the others? Pilots are dead. I answered flatly. 4 others are dead. 1 woman has a broken arm, another has cuts. The man's in bad shape. His pupils are uneven. It could be a concussion or worse. I'm sorry, JW, we can't risk it. I'll have the surgeon talk you through some things. I'm not a doctor, I protested, feeling overwhelmed. I barely keep myself together. You're out of trouble here. You can do this. The surgeon will guide you and we'll come as soon as we can. I swallowed hard. What should I do? It's getting colder. The doc says to move him carefully with a blanket. I'll try using the trailer's lift bed. I was formulating a plan, be careful. He warned, get him inside and near the radio. You might need to set the woman's arm too. I joked, got booze? Yeah, but not for me, right? I tried to lighten the mood. No, have her drink before you set the arm. Set her arm, I repeated, my voice rising. I'm not trained for this. The doc will guide you. The chief assured me it'll heal faster if set now. Just relax. You can handle this. I was in shock. 1 minute I was having lunch. Next I was playing doctor. I loaded blankets, pillows, and jackets, then sped back to the wreck. I parked close to Paul to limit movement. The women were by his side, visibly shaken. The actress looked at me, her eyes wide. Did you call emergency help? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. Part of the Alaska emergency is you and me. The Coast Guard can't come, this is a rare storm. Her face paled. But what about Paul and Janice? I called the Coast Guard. I replied, a doctor will guide us. It's the best we can do. That's not good enough, she cried, her voice breaking. You're not a doctor, and I have no training. Listen, I said firmly, trying to stay calm, that we were the only ones who could help. Let me move Paul and keep his head aligned. She was frozen for a moment, but I didn't have time to argue. It was getting darker, and we had to act fast. We managed to get Paul back to the cabin, strip off his wet clothes, and put him in my bed. I had a king-size bed for the women and took the couch. I got the women a size bed and took the couch. I radioed the chief again. I said, is the doc available? The injured man's barely hanging on. Yeah, the chief replied. Give him the vitals, temperature, pulse, and skin condition. Listen to his heart. I took a deep breath before getting to work. Janice was surprisingly calm. She gave the vitals, weak pulse around 40, cold and clammy, swelling on his right side, head wound, weak breathing. Paul was in serious trouble. The doctor said we could only wait, he explained. I was a bit nervous, but Janice made it simple. She took a swig of whiskey and said, you have to do this. It's a simple fracture. You can do it. I've never done this before, but you'll be fine. Trust me. I managed to set her arm without more damage somehow. The splinting went well when Janice came to. She said, Lucy, let JW check your head. No, I'm fine, Lucy replied, shooting me a glare. My arms are broken, so I can't help you, I added. Your cut is still bleeding. Let JW bandage it. Janice insisted that the booze gave her some courage, but Lucy wasn't having it. She looked at me with a mix of superiority and fear. I didn't want to focus on her right now because there were more urgent injuries to deal with. JW, do something, Janice urged. Her voice was tense. Lucy's losing blood. Damn it, I muttered under my breath. She hates this. She doesn't want me touching her. How do you even know my name? Janice explained that Jacob and his wife told us. She doesn't hate you, it's the opposite. Lucy snapped, glaring at Janice for siding with me. He's an idiot. He's a dirty bum, I shot back. I'm not a bum. If you weren't so set in your ways, never mind. You need help, or do you want to give up and let me take care of you when you can't argue about it enough? Janice cut in, clearly done with the bickering. Lucy, lie down. JW, get the first aid kit. Lucy reluctantly lay on the couch. I was still pretty annoyed, so I grabbed the kit and started working while Janice kept an eye on things. When I touched Lucy's head, she flinched, so I told her to stay still. I said, I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to clean and cover the wound. She flinched again. I tried to be as gentle as I could. The bandage wasn't perfect, but it would do the job once I'd finished. Lucy tried to sit up, but Janice gently pushed her back down. Janice ordered softly, "JW will get you a blanket and pillow." "I thought you two would take the king," I said, glancing between them. "I can carry her in there." Janice shook her head. "She needs to rest here. I'll sleep in this chair. You take the bed." "No way," I insisted. "You two take the bed. I'll carry her in so you can both sleep better. It's a king. It's a big house with plenty of room. My rules, if you need to know." Later that night I woke up to find Janice standing over me. She bent down, kissed my forehead, and adjusted the blanket. "You didn't have to do that," I murmured, still half asleep. "What was the kiss for, to say thank you?" She replied, "You saved us. I just helped. Paul's still not out of the woods and Lucy's sleeping too much. You should get some rest. Your arm must be killing you." I took some Tylenol and more whiskey. It's hard to sleep with the pain. "Hey, that's good." "Whiskey," I teased. "No, it's not," Janice shot back, smiling faintly. "Maybe it cost you about $14. I admitted, grinning, but that's not the point. "It doesn't matter," she said, her tone more serious now. "What matters is you're not as bad as we thought. You really tried to help." "Oh, well, just means I can't mind my own business. You're a real pain, you know that," she teased. "I'm sorry, Janice," I said, softening it a little. "It's been a long day. You need to rest. Help might come by morning." She shook her head slightly. "Help is already here in the form of—" "You know, I'm not much of a help," I muttered. "Trust me, you are," she replied quietly. The next day was quiet except for the storm raging outside. I called the Coast Guard again, but they still couldn't fly or send the cutter. I made a fire to keep the cabin warm as I stood by the stove. I heard someone approach from behind. "What are you doing?" Janice asked, her arms still in a sling, making breakfast. "Eggs, bacon, pancakes, and toast," I replied. She raised an eyebrow. "How do you have a toaster out here and a generator out back?" I explained. "Got a toaster, microwave, TV, even internet TV?" she asked, clearly surprised. "Satellite, not cable. You're not as backwards as you think." She smiled faintly. "How's your arm?" "I need more Tylenol. I'm okay," I assured her. "I took some earlier. Can I help?" I shook my head. "Just sit and talk. You shouldn't be moving." "It's my arm, not my leg," she said, a little stubbornly. "I need to do something. I owe you, but you don't owe me anything." I insisted, "And if you try to help, I'll carry you back to bed." "Sounds like macho Neanderthal talk," a voice chimed in. I turned to see. Lucy was standing there, arms crossed, looking skeptical. She was supposed to be resting. I said defensively, "I'm not an idiot despite what you think." Lucy shot back, "Yeah, and you've got a chip on your shoulder about me." Both of us stopped. Janice snapped, irritated. Lucy let her go. "Check on Paul and leave JW to cook." Lucy rolled her eyes. "I'm not hungry. Whatever he cooks would probably eliminate me anyway. That's not fair." "Lucy," Janice said firmly, "you need to apologize." Lucy glanced at me with a mix of contempt and something else. I turned back to the bacon. "It's fine," I muttered. "She doesn't need to apologize." There was a pause before Lucy spoke again, her voice softer. "Yes, I do. I'm sorry, JW. All right," I replied, trying not to sound smug. Lucy's eyes flashed angrily. "That's it, all right," she snapped, clearly expecting I was caught off guard. But before I could respond, Janice stepped in. "Lucy, stop. He accepted your apology. Let it go. But what about how he's treated me?" Lucy demanded. "Paul, what they didn't know was that I'd been up several times during the night checking on him. He was hanging on, but I was getting more anxious, hoping the Coast Guard would arrive soon after breakfast. I went to my shop for some peace and quiet. I didn't realize someone had followed me until I heard the door creak open and a gust of wind nearly sucked the fire out of the stove. "Wow, you've got quite a place here," Lucy said, her tone surprisingly friendly. It unsettled me. "It's how I make my living," I replied, trying to keep things professional. She was really impressed with my latest table. I told her I made it from spruce and cedar. She was surprised that ugly logs could be transformed into something so beautiful. I showed her some of the other things I make, like tables and cabinets. She was curious about what else I made. I told her I mostly make things for log homes. She said I was quite the craftsman. I was a bit embarrassed, but I told her I've had some practice. She asked, "Are you conscious of everything you do by hand?" She stepped closer and I said yes, mostly. I have some power tools, but I do a lot of it the old-fashioned way. She said, "Amazing." She reached out to take my hand and she traced her fingers along mine. I felt a sudden stirring inside. I quickly pulled away and I muttered, "I need to check the generator." She looked disappointed, and I rushed outside. I was nervous. Why would she be interested in me? I didn't have much to offer someone like her. For the rest of the day, she started conversations that made me uneasy. I'd find an excuse to leave. Janice seemed amused, laughing at my discomfort. That night, I insisted they take the bed. I settled on the couch the next morning. The storm raged on. The Coast Guard said they still couldn't fly out. I followed the doctor's advice but wished they could take these. That morning, I had 2 women in my care. Janice borrowed an oversized shirt, while Lucy's borrowed clothes fit her better. She stayed close, but her sharp comments were gone, making me more nervous. Later, I secured some logs on the beach as I struggled with the cables in the rain. A hand appeared to help, and it was Lucy. We secured the logs together. I was surprised she came out in the nasty weather. It made me rethink my opinion of her as we walked back. I saw Janice. After dinner that night, we all sat and talked, mostly about me and my place. Later, I woke up to see a shadow over me. A soft hand touched my face. "You're my knight in shining armor," she whispered. I pretended to sleep, thinking about her words. On day 4, I checked the wreckage for salvageable luggage. There was nothing but rags. When I returned, Lucy was folding clothes. "Sorry I was gone so long," she said. "Your luggage is all charred. Looks like you'll be wearing my t-shirt." She teased, "Shirts again tonight, they're comfortable." "Fine, take any shirt you want," I muttered, retreating to the kitchen while I washed dishes. Janice stood beside me, attempting to help with her one good arm. After realizing she couldn't do much, she simply watched. "You know she's falling for you," she said quietly. "No, it's just a crush," I replied. "You've put a small group of people together," she said. "They're together, and it'll happen once this camp is over. She'll move on and find someone more suited to her life back in Hollywood. I know Lucy better than anyone. She's changing, and it's different this time. She's falling for you, JW. Don't hurt her, please. I'll get her once the Coast Guard gets here. This will just be a memory and an adventure she'll romanticize until someone new comes along. You're underestimating her. Her Janice said she won't forget you." "Janice, we haven't kissed or done anything lovers do. She's just in summer camp mode." Janice laughed. "Oh, you're in for a surprise. It'll be interesting when Lucy gets back to Hollywood." "You mean when she goes home?" "No, I mean Hollywood. She thinks of this cabin as home now." Syndrome. I trust you when we had dinner that night. I thought back on our conversation. Maybe my comparison wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. Lucy hung on every word I said, almost embarrassingly so. I'd handled women who thought they were in love with me before, like Amber. I figured I could handle Lucy too. Later, I woke up to a shadow standing over me in the dim light. I saw it was Lucy. I pretended to be asleep. She whispered, "I love you, JW. You're my knight in shining armor." Her hand touched my shoulder and her lips brushed my cheek. I had to fight the urge to react even after she left. I could still feel the warmth of her touch. I spent the rest of the night debating with myself while checking on Paul. I told myself it was just summer camp syndrome, but I kept wondering what if it's not. In the morning, the storm had calmed down and the sun was starting to come out. We had breakfast and I prepared Paul, knowing the Coast Guard would arrive soon. Half an hour later, we heard the helicopter approaching. I went outside, hoping the doctor was on board. It was, and a medic came into the cabin quickly, hooking up IVs and getting Paul ready for transport. We took him and the young lady to Cocoon, the doctor explained, gesturing to Janice, and then we went back for the others. He turned to me and said, "You did a great job, JW. Paul's going to be okay. I'll stay with Lucy for now." "Lives," she said softly. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," she shook her head. "You saved us. They'll be back soon to get you too. You'll be out of here soon." Janice looked at me. Her expression was full of a newfound understanding. "You really did save us, JW, Paul." "Paul wouldn't have. You did it without me, and you set my arm like a pro." The doctor was on the radio, so I replied, trying to downplay it. "Yeah, but you did the work," Janice insisted. "Fine," I muttered. "You're welcome, all of you." Lucy gave me a long look. "You really don't like praise, do you?" she asked. Her voice was soft but teasing. "I just did what anyone would do," I repeated, feeling uncomfortable. "I'm no hero," I muttered. The women were grateful, but Lucy said, let it go. I could tell she wasn't finished with the conversation. Later, the Coast Guard returned to pick up the women. I was relieved their presence had been making me increasingly nervous. As Lucy prepared to board, she surprised me by hugging me tightly. Then, before I could react, she kissed me on the lips. I was surprised by the kiss. I asked her what it was for. She replied that she was thanking me for saving our lives and for not being as nice to me as she should have been. She said I was her knight in shining armor. Could I apologize to the girl who took the, "I feel bad about that"? I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take advantage. Take care of yourself, Lucy. Maybe things will go smoother if you come back. I'll visit when I'm back for filming." As the helicopter sound faded, I realized that doors were always going to open for me. In 5 days, everything had changed. I'd had a few surprises. Lucy wasn't as bad as I thought I could handle emergencies. In fact, I needed a woman. I'd had a few days with Lucy and Janice, and my mind had changed. The FAA investigators came not long after. They never found the cause of the jet fire. Life gradually returned to normal. But that feeling of needing a woman only grew stronger. I knew I had an issue, but didn't know how to handle it at Christmas. I got a package from town with gifts from Amber. The delivery guy said she'd asked him to drop them off if he was in the area. It made me start thinking about Amber differently. Now I had 2 women on my mind. Winter dragged on, but eventually the snow melted and spring arrived. It had been a long, harsh season, but I got a lot done. I finished 25 table sets and some end tables. I decided to take them to town myself, since I hadn't been able to reach Paul to see if he'd made his crabbing trip safely. I got to town and Jacob seemed to be in a bad mood. I said, "Hey Jacob, how's it going?" He replied, "The film crew brought about 100 people, so I've had to double my orders." I asked, "Oh, they're filming now?" He nodded and said, "That actress has been asking about you. Seems you made quite the impression." I said, "Nah, I just helped when they needed it." Jacob said with a knowing look, curious. I pressed him, "What exactly did you hear?" Before he could answer, Emma walked in and Jacob quickly got busy. Frustrated, I tried again. "What have you been hearing?" Nothing at all," Jacob said, avoiding eye contact. Jacob was feeding you stories about the movie?" "I'm not sure. I admitted that he mentioned hearing something about last winter, but now he's clammed up." "Jacob, you should know better," Emma said, wagging her finger at him. Then she turned to me. "That actress has been asking about you, JW. She really wants to talk and thank you for the care you gave her." It was nothing. I just shrugged, feeling a bit uncomfortable with all the attention. Emma countered, and so did Paul and Janice. "Paul made it through, you know, and he's been asking about you. They all have, especially the actress who's a big fan of yours." "I was just lucky to be able to help," I said, trying to deflect. "I couldn't save everyone, but saving Paul meant a lot," Emma said, her voice softening. "They'll never forget you got a thing for her, JW. She's quite pretty," I replied too quickly, feeling a bit embarrassed. Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly seeing through my attempt to deny it. "Huh," she said, not buying it. "You do like her, and she's interested in you too. Stop." "Emma," I said, feeling cornered, "don't go there." "You need a woman," Emma insisted, her tone more serious. "No man needs a woman, might want one, but need priests and monks." "They do fine without," Emma shot back. "I won't argue your choices, JW, but you're wrong. You've been angry ever since that woman left you for that doctor. Now you've got a chance with a good woman. That actress might be the one." "An actress? No way," I scoffed, shaking my head. "She's human, beautiful, well off, and has heart," Emma replied pointedly. "More than I can say for some." I frowned. "I thought you were my friend." "You're not helping." "I am helping." "JW," Emma said, "this Hollywood gal might be just what you need. It's time to move on," I muttered, unconvinced. "Why would she be interested in me? I'm just a hermit. I helped because I was there. That's all she had. No other choice." Emma was smiling, looking over my shoulder. I turned to find Lucy standing behind me. Janice stepped closer too. I moved Lucy aside so JW could take over. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. I knew I'd have to point it out, but not as close as I had with Lucy. My face turned red, and Janice noticed. "JW, that blush says it all. It looks like you just realized you didn't need to get that close to Lucy earlier. Go on, show me where it is." "It's over there," I said, pointing. I could hear Emma, Jacob, and a few others in the background snickering. "You're about 6 feet away from me now. Just like when Lucy was standing here. Why did you get so close to her but not to me? Janice pressed, and I stammered, trying to come up with an answer. I wasn't thinking, I said. Relax, I'm just joking around. Lucy moved to stand next to me, linking her arm through mine. I could smell her hair, which made me even more nervous. Janice, still smiling, suggested that we should leave Lucy and me to work things out. We're not lovebirds, I snapped, surprised at the harshness in my voice. Lucy looked up at me, her expression unreadable. Stepping back, Janice's smile quickly faded, and she started to apologize. Sorry, JW, Janice said softly. Stop, I replied, shaking my head. All I was doing was pointing to the flight service. Oh, really? Janice teased, her mood shifting. Yes, really, I said firmly. You weren't about to kiss Lucy? Janice asked, raising an eyebrow. No, I stammered, feeling. I was in a tight spot, standing close to you with your heads inches apart. Janice said you both knew you were about to kiss. Janice, stop. Lucy spoke up, her voice calm but insistent. JW was just being nice. Janice wasn't convinced you two were at each other's throats. Last time, she reminded us. Then, when you got back to LA, Lucy was complaining JW. You even started researching Alaska specifically. It's clear you both like each other more than you're admitting. I shifted uncomfortably, trying to leave the conversation, but Emma's voice cut through, stopping me in my tracks. JW, Emma said firmly, you need to explain yourself to this young lady. I turned back to Lucy, who was watching me with a mix of fear. Lucy's eyes were filled with hope. Lucy, I'm not sure what to say. I want to find the right words, but nothing comes to mind. Lucy stepped closer, her gaze locked on mine. JW, she asked softly, batting her eyelashes in a way that left me utterly lost. Janice and Paul have been talking about your place since last fall. We've missed it. You were only there a few days, I pointed out, feeling a bit awkward, but you took care of us. Lucy said, her voice softening, you saved us. I was just in the right place at the right time. I insisted, trying to downplay it, and you helped. She continued, stepping even closer. Yeah, I helped out, I muttered, my heart racing, and I owe you for that. She added, her eyes never leaving mine. No, you don't, I said, shaking my head. She moved even closer, our faces now inches apart. I could feel her warm breath, and for a moment I didn't want that feeling to end. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're welcome, I replied softly. Her lips met mine, and without thinking, my arms wrapped around her. I kissed her back, holding on tight. I felt a presence beside me. It was Janice, inches away, grinning. Hey, you're next. I blushed. We pulled apart. Janice stepped in, kissed me lightly, then smiled at us both. I'm hurt. You won't love me. Mel, you like her as much as Lucy does, don't you? Janice said, sounding annoyed. I said, Janice is right, we shouldn't have kissed. We don't really know each other that well. Oh, JW, Janice cut in. You have a lot to learn about Miss Lucy. She's been digging up info on you all winter. Lucy blushed, looking a bit frightened. She's entitled. I said, I'm not hiding anything. Oh, how about your feelings for one particular lady? Janice shot back. You come on strong when you want to, I replied. You're not ready for how much Lucy is focused on you, Janice continued. I was the center of her interest, and it made me blush too. I turned to Lucy. Look, I think I like you more than a little. I'd like to get to know you better, but I'm just me. What you see is what you get. Emma and Jacob were beaming. I felt like this was all happening too fast and in the wrong place. I said, I'm not one to discuss personal matters in public. If you want to come out, the door is open. Use the flight service if you want to save time. I've got to go. I walked down. I glanced back and saw that Lucy and Janice were arguing on the porch, while Emma and Jacob stood there smiling and waving at me. They'd never waved at me like that before. I almost missed seeing Amber as I stepped onto my boat. She was coming out of the store. I hadn't seen her inside, so I wondered where she was during all that. The whole incident felt like grade school. Do you like her? She likes you. I didn't like it then, and I'm not a fan now, despite missing Lucy. I hope she gets too busy too. I didn't want any complications, and I could tell that being part of her life would be just that. On Saturday morning, I heard the float plane approaching. It banked hard, then descended towards my dock. It was Joe himself flying, even though he was in his 70 seconds. I wondered why he took this flight instead of one of his other pilots as he docked. I grabbed the line and tied it off. Janice stepped out of the plane first, followed by Paul and then Lucy. Lucy looked around nervously until her eyes she landed on me. Her face lit up and she started walking towards me. As she got closer, she broke into a run, throwing her arms around me and hugging me tightly. She kissed my cheek, and before I knew it, that kiss turned into a passionate one. Joe, who was standing nearby, cleared his throat. "When should I pick you up tomorrow?" he asked. Janice smiled over at him. "4 in the afternoon should be fine," she replied. "We'll work," Joe said, bringing back any Fisher game. Janice chuckled. "I doubt it," she replied. "Maybe just Lucy and her big old bear." Lucy teased Janice. "Stop it!" Joe nodded again, then untied the plane and climbed aboard. "See you all tomorrow. Take care," he called out, waving as the plane taxied out and lifted into the sky. We all stood watching as it banked and headed back. Paul turned to me, offering his hand. "Glad to finally meet you," he said with a grin. "Thanks for saving my life last winter," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Come on up," I said. "I'll get your suitcases, Lucy." Lucy shook her head. "I can carry my own stuff, thanks," Paul interjected, giving Lucy a teasing look. "Let him help, Lucy. You argue more than any woman I know." Lucy blushed slightly and handed me the larger suitcase without further protest. Janice laughed. "Paul, you should have been up and about back then. You could have quieted them both faster than I ever did." "I'm just teasing," Janice replied, with a mischievous smile on her face. Then, turning to me, she added, "By the way, mind if I kiss your boyfriend to thank him like you did?" "He's not my boyfriend," Lucy exclaimed, struggling to keep her composure. "I was just glad to see him," I said. "That's all." "Great," Janice said with a grin. "Then you won't mind if I do this?" Lucy could respond. Janice stepped forward, hugged me tightly, and kissed me on the lips. The kiss lingered longer than I expected, startling me, and I let go. I took the suitcase and gave her a hug before pulling away gently. I saw a look in Lucy's eyes that seemed to hint at jealousy. I wondered briefly why, but the moment passed as we headed up the path to my cabin. "You girls can take the big bed. Paul, you get the other bed in there. I'll sleep on the couch." Most nights anyway, I didn't catch the look Lucy and Janice exchanged. It wasn't until later that I realized how much I'd given away with that statement. Sometimes what seems innocent reveals more than intended. We spent the morning catching up since the crash. I noticed Paul and Janice seemed close, almost like they wanted to kiss but held back. Meanwhile, Lucy seemed unaware of their tension, which made me wonder. After lunch, I gave them a tour of the property. The last spot was the point. It's a flat, clear area at the highest part of my land with an incredible view. It always takes my breath away. "Why didn't you build your cabin here?" Paul asked. "The view is amazing. Building here would ruin this place. I might put a bench near that Sitka spruce someday, but nothing else. It's perfect for meditation," I replied. "Meditation, you?" Lucy looked surprised. "Yeah, I meditate when I can. This spot calms me," I said, smiling to show I wasn't offended. "You keep surprising me." "JW," she replied. "Oh, look, I can make calls or get messages here if I have cell service, but it's not reliable," I said, looking disappointed. She focused more on the view than the cell service as we headed back. I noticed a small skiff approaching the dock. It was rare to have visitors, so I was curious. Lucy took my arm. "You know, we could put a cell tower up here and get reliable service. Why would I want a cell tower messing up the view? I don't need that kind of technology here." She looked annoyed. I was taken aback. It wasn't until we were near the cabin that I realized she'd said we could put in a tower. It made me rethink what kind of relationship she was imagining. The person from the skiff was walking up the trail. When they got closer, I saw it was Amber, carrying 2 large salmon. "Hey, JW, thought you might like some fresh salmon just caught. These were an hour ago," she said, glancing at Lucy and the others. "Oh, you have company. Thanks, Amber. We could have a salmon bake if you'd like to stay." I was curious since this was the first time Amber had shown up alone. "That sounds good." "I don't want to intrude, though you're not intruding," Lucy cut in, taking my arm. "Amber, this is Lucy. This is Janice and Paul. We're just visiting for a couple of days." JW invited us. Amber stayed cool, though I caught a spark in her eyes as Lucy linked arms with me. Amber looked like she was just about holding back laughter while Paul just smiled at me. I was starting to regret having company inside. Amber went straight to the sink, got a fillet knife and said, "I'll get these ready for baking." She flopped the salmon onto the counter, and I handed her the knife and stepped back. Lucy, Janice, and Paul watched as Amber expertly filleted the salmon, leaving the skin and guts in one piece. Both salmon were done in just minutes. I noticed all three of them had a yuck look on. After Amber finished, there was a brief silence before I spoke up. She'd worked at the Canaries in high school, and she'd clearly had a lot of practice. Lucy stared at Amber, then at me, with a look I couldn't read. Janice had a similar expression while Paul struggled not to laugh. Amber looked at me with an oddly personal gaze, and the silence grew awkward. So I said, "How about I get the grill going?" "Paul, can you help me?" I asked. Paul nodded and we stepped onto the back deck. The women stayed inside, talking. Paul said, "It looks like you've got your hands full." I replied, "I'm not sure what to do." Paul said, "Well, you have three choices. Go after Lucy, pursue Amber, who seems already hooked, or get on your boat and take off. I guess that means I'm on my own." I sighed, lighting the grill. "It's up to you, partner, but you might need to act soon." "I know," he said, with a knowing smile. "That boat is looking pretty tempting." "I know," I muttered. Paul laughed. He was a solid guy who knew I had to work things out myself. I had to decide who I really needed in my life. The hard part was knowing someone would get hurt for a moment. I seriously considered Paul's third option. Could I make it to the boat without being caught? Dinner quickly turned into a verbal duel. It started with Lucy's question. "Amber, I have a question for you. Are you planning on going to college this fall?" Amber glanced up before replying, "Probably not. My dad's a guide, and I'll likely join the family business." "The world could be good for you, honey," Lucy pressed on. "You might find better opportunities." Amber's gaze turned icy. "I've seen the world, honey, and I know what and who I want in it." Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. Lucy kept pushing. "But a girl your age could learn so much by going to a university is such a limiting concept." Amber's eyes met mine. "We both know we want JW. I'm not leaving just so you can swoop in. I love him just as he is." I was stunned. I hadn't expected Amber to make such a bold declaration. Janice and Paul shifted in their seats. Bracing for a possible confrontation, Lucy took a deep breath. "I'm closer to JW's age and I can give him a more stable life. I do a lot for him." Amber's expression hardened. "You'd probably try to change him. Build an empire here and leave them alone while you're off filming, and you'd plan kids." They wanted to put them on a strict schedule with nannies to raise them. Each word was like a dagger aimed at Lucy's lifestyle. Lucy's face flushed with anger. "I have a career that requires planning. I make my money by being present, not hiding away in some remote place." Janice quickly stood and dragged Lucy outside. Paul glanced at me, the humor gone from his eyes. He silently followed them outside. Amber turned to me, looking regretful. "I'm sorry, JW. I didn't mean to upset her, but I had to stand my ground. I think I should go now." In that moment, everything clicked. I realized why I'd felt uneasy about Lucy. Her career would always come first, and I'd always be second. Amber, on the other hand, was ready to put me first. But she didn't know that I was. I was already in love with her. I loved Amber. Amber got up to leave, and I followed. I pulled her into my arms, and her tears began to fall. "I'm sorry, JW," Amber sobbed. Her voice was breaking. "I mess things up when I'm close to you. I just love you so much." I kissed her on the top of her head and said, "Go clean up, we need to talk." I said softly and guided her toward the bathroom. I went inside and found Lucy and Janice deep in conversation. As I approached, Janice stepped aside, sensing the tension. I said quietly, "Lucy, we need to talk." Lucy nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. She whispered, "You and I won't work. I do love you, but I can't walk away from my career. It comes first." I suggested, "We should call Joe and leave today." I pulled her into a hug. I gave her a hug and kissed her on the cheek. It was a gentle kiss, like a farewell between friends rather than lovers. After a moment, Lucy and Janice walked away together to find Paul. As they left, I turned to see Amber standing in the doorway, looking sad and uncertain. I motioned for her to come closer. "Your parents know you're here," I said gently. "Yeah," she replied, nodding. "I told my mom I was going fishing. It's late to go back by boat." I pointed out that she could fly back with Lucy, Janice, and Paul, or she could stay. Amber's head snapped up, her eyes filled with fear and reluctance. "No," she said hesitantly, "I'd rather stay." I said my tone was soft but serious. "Do you know why Lucy is leaving today?" Amber shook her head. "It's because we both realized that we wouldn't work." I told her, and I could see her confusion. I took a deep breath and realized that I loved someone else. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Who?" I said. My voice was steady. "I love you, Amber." Without hesitation, she leapt into my arms and kissed me. "I love you, JW," she whispered. Her voice was filled with joy. We saw Lucy, Janice, and Paul off. There were no hard feelings, just acceptance of what the future held after they left. I turned to Amber and suggested she call her parents to let them know where she was staying that night. I was curious about how she'd handle it. Amber made the call, and I heard her tell her mum she'd be spending the night with me. Her mum's response was something I'd never forget. "Well, it's about time.